Today on NewsWatch, new details emerge about the Russian plane crash that killed more than 200 people. CBN's terrorism analyst weighs in on whether ISIS is really responsible. Plus, Canada officially has a new leader. Hear what pro-life advocates say his liberal politics mean for the pro-life movement in that nation. And this week in Studio 5, we sit down with the man whose music is topping the gospel charts. The singer shares with us the secret behind his success. Thanks so much for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Ephraim Graham. Investigators now think a bomb may have downed that Russian passenger plane over the Sinai, as more evidence points in that direction. Dale Hurd is on this story.
A U.S. official speaking on condition of anonymity says intercepted communications played a role in the tentative conclusion that the Islamic State group's Sinai affiliate planted an explosive device on the plane. But the official says there has been no formal judgment because forensic evidence from the blast site, including the airplane's black box, are still being analyzed. Intelligence analysts don't believe the operation was ordered by Islamic State leaders in Raqqa, Syria. Rather, they believe if it was a bomb, it was planned and executed by the Islamic State's affiliate in the Sinai, which operates independently. CBN News terrorism analyst Eric Stakelbeck says if ISIS claims responsibility for something, it's usually true.
ISIS has had a pretty good track record of when they claim responsibility for attacks, it usually does turn out to be them. We don't know in this case, obviously, but so far, ISIS has not really been one to go out on a limb and say they did something that they didn't do.
The British government acted quickly to protect British tourists.
There will be no UK passenger flights out to Sharm el-Sheikh from now. Passengers who are on the ground in Sharm el-Sheikh will be returned to the UK.
Some British tourists were not happy about it.
I would prefer to come here and make my own decision rather than the government telling us I couldn't go.
It's a really bad decision because I think that nowadays this can happen anywhere in the world. You need to live your life and not let the terrorists win.
Now comes the question of how a bomb might have gotten on the plane. CBN News chief international correspondent Gary Lane.
So what these aviation experts from the UK are going to be looking at is, was it possibly someone who worked for one of the airlines, a grounds crew person who actually went in and planted that bomb?
Russian teams are now wrapping up their search for human remains from the Saturday crash that killed all 224 people aboard. Only 140 bodies have been recovered so far. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
New numbers show many Americans disapprove of President Barack Obama's approach to fighting the Islamic State. That is according to an Associated Press GFK poll. It found 60% reject the president's handling of the threat from the militants, and 40% approve of the president's management of foreign policy. This time last year, Americans were roughly split on the issue. The poll also suggests there's deep pessimism about U.S. prospects for success in Afghanistan. The State Department is continuing its review of the controversial Keystone XL oil pipeline, despite a request by the project's developer to suspend it. TransCanada requested a suspension while it works with Nebraska authorities on its preferred route through the state. But the Obama administration says there is no legal requirement for officials to suspend the review, and they're moving forward. The State Department has jurisdiction over the project because it crosses a U.S. border. Justin Trudeau, Canada's new Prime Minister, has been sworn into office. His election brings an end to a 10-year Conservative rule in Canada. The 43-year-old is the son of former Prime Minister Elliott Trudeau. Pro-life advocate John Henry Weston tells CBN News his appointment creates a chance to revive his father's liberal agenda, particularly on abortion.
Justin has been totally upfront about being so wholly pro-abortion, it's not even funny. In fact, before the election, he said that none of the candidates in his party could support life, that they would all be required to vote pro-abortion. Any person who wanted to run for the Liberal Party, and he was even talking about coercing the members who are already elected. So you have someone who's totally ideologically driven that way.
Canada's pro-life leaders say they will have to take the fight to the political arena like never before to protect life. Here in the U.S., organizers of the annual March for Life are working to recruit new soldiers in the fight against abortion. Next year, they hope to take advantage of the presidential election, likely to pit a female pro-choice champion against a pro-lifer. As Paul Strand reports from Capitol Hill, they want the country to know that pro-life and pro-woman go hand in hand.
Most political observers agree Hillary Clinton will be the Democrats' likely presidential nominee. If so, the public can expect speeches and ads about how pro-life Republicans wage a war on women when they try to limit abortions. In an attempt to take on that rhetoric, those at this Capitol Hill gathering announced the theme of 2016's March for Life is pro-life and pro-woman go hand in hand. Somehow in recent years, being pro-life has become equated with waging a war on women. This event is all about proving that's not the case.
We keep hearing in the media and throughout the different debates, especially with the upcoming election, that in order for someone to be pro-woman, they have to be pro-abortion or pro-choice. We say that the opposite is the case, that no woman in her right mind should ever be put into a corner like that to want to make a choice like abortion.
These leaders are outraged that abortion supporters were able to hijack the feminist cause.
For some crazy reason, supporters of legal abortion were able to make their cause synonymous with women. And it's just the height of irony when you think that what they did essentially was treat women as victims, do nothing to empower them. They've never set up a crisis pregnancy center. They've never set up a post-abortion healing. And basically affirm a male model of human sexuality. Sex, no baby.
I find it sad. Peace begins in the womb. And we believe in peaceful coexistence between mothers and children. So, women deserve better than abortion, and every child deserves their right to life.
A woman's capacity for motherhood is a tremendous gift, and we want to celebrate that. We know that being pro-woman really actually means being pro-life. Pro-life is pro-woman. It's pro-child, and it's pro-woman.
The 41st March for Life will be January 22nd, marking the day in 1974 when the Supreme Court legalized abortion. Paul Strand, CBN News, Capitol Hill.
Coming up this week, Israelis remember one of Israel's most respected leaders. Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin will show you how he's being honored. The world can change dramatically in the course of 20 years, but in the Middle East, it seems the more things change, the more they stay the same. This week, Israelis mark the 20th anniversary of the assassination of Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin. Chris Mitchell brings us this look at how Rabin is being remembered.
Saturday evening, November 4th, 1995. Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin had just sung Shir LaShalom, the song for peace, along with some 100,000 Israelis in Tel Aviv.
He was a man of the left who was respected on the right. He was a man who was cautious, who made bold decisions.
Shortly afterward, a Jewish extremist gunned down the prime minister.
It was not just a political assassination, it was the murder of a hero and a grandfather.
Rabin is buried here in Mount Herzl Cemetery in Jerusalem. Many Israelis come here to honor his legacy. His murder stunned the nation and the world. Leaders from some 40 countries traveled here to Jerusalem for Rabin's funeral.
Though we no longer hear his deep and booming voice, it is he who has brought us together again here, in word and deed, for peace.
A few years earlier, Rabin told CBN founder Pat Robertson Israel must remain strong in the face of threats.
Does it seem as if Syria, possibly any of the other Arab states, might want to move into some kind of a jihad against Jerusalem, against Israel, or is that likely?
I was born here in Jerusalem. I fought in the two wars that decided the fate of Jerusalem to become the capital of the state of Israel. And I believe that they'll never be able to fulfill what they try to achieve as long as we'll keep our powder dry, our belief unshaken, and we'll have the patience to do what our heritage, religion call us to do.
Michael Widlansky, author of Battle for Our Minds, says the problems of today closely resemble those from decades ago.
Some of the world's leaders don't interpret events correctly. Rabin was genuinely loved in Israel, but even at the time of his death, many Israelis thought that his bold action towards peace was a mistake.
In 1993, Rabin and PLO Chairman Yasser Arafat's representatives signed the Declaration of Principles in the presence of U.S. President Bill Clinton on the White House lawn.
The agreement with the Palestine Liberation Organization did several things. First of all, it saved the Palestine Liberation Organization. The second thing is it brought in an era of terror unmatched in Israel's history. And the third thing is it taught Israelis that to build peace required more than just hoping for peace. It meant building security.
In 1975, 18 years before Prime Minister Rabin shook Arafat's hand, he told Robertson that while superpowers could play a role in Arab-Israeli peacemaking, they could not replace the parties themselves.
Any peace negotiations have to start on the assumption that the purpose of the exercise, the purpose of the negotiations, is to make peace. And to make peace between whom? Between the Arab countries and Israel.
Prime Minister, if the Arab countries are not truly willing to accept peace negotiations with Israel, do you feel that the efforts of the superpowers, either the United States or Russia, will bring anything good towards peace?
I think that the major powers can create conditions, can create the environment that would lead the Arab countries on one hand and Israel on the other hand to make peace. But the peacemaking is the responsibility of the parties to the conflict.
In 1979, Israel signed its first peace treaty with Egypt, and in 1994, its second treaty with Jordan. Both agreements have held for decades, despite ups and downs.
The peace agreements that Israel made proved several things. First, Israel wants peace. Secondly, Israel can make peace with real countries when there are real joint interests. But third, Israel should not try to make peace with make-believe organizations of make-believe minorities with make-believe national movements.
During a rally marking the 20th anniversary, former President Bill Clinton urged Israelis to finish Rabin's legacy of refusing to give up his peace dream, even in the face of terror.
Whenever there was a terrible incident here and I would call him, he simply repeated what we in the White House came to know as Rabin's Law. We will fight terror as if there were no negotiations, but we will negotiate as if there were no terror.
But Woodlansky says if Rabin were alive today, he would likely rethink the so-called Rabin's Law.
I think he would be very disappointed with his own endeavor and would say Israel has to rely upon itself, upon God, and upon its own better judgment to survive and to thrive.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Mount Herzl Cemetery, Jerusalem.
Up next, Anthony Brown's music tops gospel charts, and today we're sitting down with him in Studio 5. He shares with us his path to success. He is the Baltimore native behind a song that continues to top the gospel charts many months after its release. It is simply called Worth. Anthony Brown is enjoying his latest success, but this isn't the dream he had for himself. The singer and songwriter simply wanted to work for Disney, and he's with us this week in Studio 5. Anthony Brown and Group Therapy are the voices behind this chart-topping tune. It's simply called Worth. Now, your music, the song Worth, has been #1?
It has.
For a few weeks?
For a couple weeks, which is surprising to me. I was shocked. It's actually my first #1.
Really?
Yeah. Testimony was great. It never got to #1. It probably got to #3, I think. So when my radio rep called me and said it was #1, I was like, you gotta be kidding. And it has been there for a couple weeks.
Nice. Tell us about the song. What's the story behind it?
Man, you know, the song is so simple, you know, and I think when I wrote it, I never thought, because it's such a simple song, that it would go and translate so far. But I wrote it in communion service at my church. I was literally sitting in communion at First Baptist Church of Glenarden, which is my church. Pastor Jenkins was talking, and we were doing communion. And I started thinking about the whole concept that Jesus, the Son of God, died for my sins, that he thought I was worth that. And I took out my iPad and started writing, you know, typing, you thought I was worth saving. And literally 4 lines came out and that was it. So I sung it at my church probably a month later just to test it out. And the response was so overwhelming that I knew I gotta record this, you know. And I just thought it was so simple and so minuscule, but obviously it's resonated with a lot of people.
Love the song as well.
Thanks.
What have people been saying to you about it?
I get a lot of emails that really touch my heart. I'm talking about this very reluctantly because it does create emotion in me, but to know that there are people out there who struggle with their identity, they struggle with knowing that they're worth anything. And I think society makes people feel like they can never live up to a certain standard or become whatever that standard is. And to hear that the song, those words, are resonating with people in a way where they're like, no, I know that I'm worth something. I know that God created me for a purpose. It means so much to me. I wrote it, you know, like I said, in my church, and to know that it's gone so far away out of this country and just across the world, for me, just, it blows my mind.
This may be his first #1 single, but the Baltimore native and classically trained pianist isn't new to music.
I grew up a pastor's kid, so I grew up in church all of my life. Started playing when I was 3 years old, and took my first minister of music job when I was 12, teaching a bunch of adults.
So, you say at 12?
At 12 years old, I'm up there, you know, on the piano teaching a bunch of adults, and I'm like, who is this kid? But it's always been my passion, always been my desire to use the gift that God gave me. I saw myself doing Disney. That's what I wanted to be. So I'm like, you know, Lord, I'm gonna take you, me, we're going over to Disney, we're gonna do The Lion King. That's what I wanted to do. You know, and I saw those characters and the songs, that's my style, I love it. And so it wasn't this. I definitely saw myself more Broadway and Disney, but you know, God had a plan.
How did the path begin this way? So you're thinking Broadway and so forth. How does the path push you here?
Well, I'm a servant by nature, and so there are different artists who I love, namely this lady named Marette Brown Clark, who is, she's like my mom. She's my heart. And she was doing a project, and I said, Mom, you know, so I called her, I wrote a song that I think I want you to hear. And we were driving to a concert. She was gonna be in concert with Richard Smallwood, and I really wanted to go because I'm a humongous Richard Smallwood fan. And I said, I have this song, I want you to hear it. She said, okay. And so I'm driving with her, no track, no music, and I just say, I know the odds look stacked against you, and it seems there's no way out. And I'm singing the song, It Ain't Over, and she just starts crying.
So just know it ain't over.
The song rose to #1 for Marette Brown Clark, and Anthony would go on to write hits for gospel greats like Donnie McClurkin, Donald Lawrence, Stephen Hurd, and Vashawn Mitchell, who actually encouraged Brown to record his first project, Testimony.
I sent Vashawn Testimony when I finished recording it. And I said, I'm gonna release it at my church. I just want you to hear it, tell me what you think. He called me immediately and he said, you cannot release that song at your church. I said, why not?
It's home.
Right, exactly. He's like, no, that song needs to be heard by way more people than you have access to. I'm like, Vashawn, I've tried this, that, and the third. He said, what if I can find a situation for you that you really like? I said, okay, you know. And that night he called me with, who is now my label president, on the phone. And 2 weeks later, I signed a deal.
And that was the public birth of the group the world now knows as Anthony Brown and Group Therapy. Now, the group behind your voice, Group Therapy, the AP stands for something. Tell me about how this group started and...
Yeah. The AP is always capitalized in therapy, and it's because the group used to be called Answered Prayers. They've been with me for 15 years. We met in college, and it wasn't like, Lord, send me a group, you know what I mean? It was like I was in the practice room one day playing some songs, and I'm like, hey, you, You, come here, sing this song. And that's literally what happened. 15 years later, we're still doing it. You, and you, come here and sing this song. We never signed any contracts. They are literally my family. And when I moved to California, they moved to California. Nobody knows this, so I'm telling you something super exclusive. I moved to California. They all quit their jobs, and they moved to California with me and moved into my one-bedroom apartment. So we have one bedroom, all the guys are in the living room, all the girls are in the bedroom. And that's where the unit, the tightness, the closeness of group therapy comes from, because we literally have been to the backside of the mountain and back together.
So what can we expect next? What's going to happen?
Wow, you never know. I have big dreams, and doing music is one of those things, but I would love to take music to another place. In my mind, I want to fuse something that looks like Cirque du Soleil goes gospel. I see it being on a stage. I see it being theatrical and performance-driven, but taking the gospel to that arena, I think opens us up to so many more people who may never step foot in the church. And so if I have my way next year, I'll be doing something like that.
And we'll be watching for it. Worth is still at the top of the chart, sitting at number 2 right now. Stay with us. We'll be right back. This may be one for the record books. An order of nuns in Wisconsin has continually prayed for people for the last 137 years. Members of the Franciscan Sisters of Perpetual Adoration have been working shifts since 1878. The La Crosse, Wisconsin nuns take turns lifting up prayers for the sick, troubled, and stressed out. And they do it nonstop, night and day. The 100 sisters do get some help from about 180 prayer partners, but the nuns usually take the longer night shifts. Well, it is now time for your Thursday Thankful, and today I pause to take note that God places gifts and talents inside of each and every one of us. But know this, those natural gifts work best when they're guided by the gift of the Holy Spirit. He will show you how to use them to bless and to expand the kingdom of God. So use your gift, but let the Holy Spirit guide you on exactly how to use it. That is going to do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. Remember, you can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about always at cbnnews.com. We'd love to hear what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can connect with us online for that. Thanks so much for watching. Hope you'll join us again right here next time. It's Thursday. Make it a thankful one.